Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today's project is a Shimano 2000. It's a Sedona 2000F. It's been around a while. It's in for its annual service. This one's turning nice and easily. So over the course of the video today, we're going to show you how to take this reel apart, how to service it, and how to keep it running nicely so that it will fish for years to come. Before I get started, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you like the art of fishing reel repair, if you like to see how reels are made, what makes reels different from one another, and, well, get a little comment about the reels themselves, well, then subscribing to the channel is the best way to do it. The goal of Second Chance Tackle is to keep fishing reels fishing and to show you how to do it yourself as an educational form. So if you have one of these reels, you will learn how to service it by watching the video. Well, we're going to start by removing the exterior pieces. We take out the screw that holds the handle in from the other side, and then we can remove the handle. And I like to take that screw and put it right back into the handle so I don't lose it. And I like to use parts trays. I use a fast food container as a parts tray for most of the pieces and parts. And that helps me stay in one place and know where they are when it's time to reinstall. We've taken the handle off. We'll take the spool off now. And I had several reels come in from this fella, and none of them were very well maintained. Not sure I'm going to find here, other than I know this one's working better than some. Well, we removed the spool by taking off the adjuster button. There are drag washers under there. We'll show you how to service them a little bit later in the video. And, well, we just want to continue with getting the to the internal parts which need to be serviced. We want to remove the click and the spool shim washers next. Sometimes you can just pull up on them and they come off. Sometimes these little shim washers on top here, well, they get stuck. You may have to use a little leverage like a razor knife or something to do that. Well, we've removed that side. There are 3 side plate screws now to take off. And these can be taken off with a flat-bladed screwdriver or a Phillips head screwdriver. I like the Phillips head screwdrivers. They seem to get a better grip and don't have that screwdriver fall out of the slot all the time. So we'll kind of do this. As we do, I want to encourage you to ask questions. If you have a question about a fishing reel, manufacturer, maybe you're working on one and you're stuck and you want to try and see if I can help you get unstuck, leave those in the comment section below. Your question doesn't have to pertain to this reel, and I will try to answer them for you. I've taken the 3 side plate screws out and I've put them on my table. I wanted to make sure that they're all the same size. Shimano is one of those manufacturers in particular that likes to put different size screws in different places, and, well, if you don't know where the longer screw or the shorter screw belongs, it could be a problem in the performance of your reel. Those 3 screws come off. You should be able to remove the side plate now. We can. This says 2 ball bearings on it. We have a bushing on this side. I'm going to remove that bushing. And when you remove that bushing, please note that there are 2 studs. They're 180 degrees apart. And they need to fit into the slots in this side case here. There's 2 on each side. If you do not get them into the slot, this bushing is going to ride high, and if it rides high, it's not going to perform well. It's going to compress that main gear, like that's riding high right now. It's going to compress the main gear, and it's going to put pressure on there so that it performs poorly. Well, you just need to kind of grab it and play around with it. You will get it. Sort of a visual. There are 2 points here that correspond with the internal points, so it's not a complete guess here. You got 2 arrows here. You want to line those arrows up as best you can with the slot. And again, just be patient, but you will get it. There we go. Now you'll see that that side plate bushing is flat or even to the plate, and that's the way it should be installed. So just take a particular note of this. Well, as I mentioned with the fellow's other reels, it's been a long time since this reel has seen a cleanup and a lubrication. It's kind of a sign to Shimano's quality that it is performing as well as it is, given that there's barely any grease on there. Well, we're going to take the axle shaft off now. We're going to remove that hold-fast screw that's in the bottom of the crosswind block. And it's a good place to tell you to take pictures before you get too involved in taking things apart. If you take the pictures, you'll notice critical orientations and how it was before you started removing pieces. That way, if you get stuck on the reinstall, if you forgot an orientation, if you got which piece came first, those kinds of things, well, go back to your pictures as a reference point. You can also get a schematic of the reel. That's a burst diagram that shows you how the reel is made. But the pictures will help you tremendously. I just wiped off the old grease on here, and I just noticed that this is nice and smooth. There's no pitting or corrosion going on with that axle shaft. If there was some burrs in there, some dried grease that you couldn't wipe off with a paper towel, by all means, go to a more abrasive thing. Start maybe with something like a kitchen scrubby. That's not going to hurt any of the metals. And if you need to, go more to a steel wool. If you use the steel wool, only use the 4L variety, the least abrasive, and that way you will kind of save wear and tear on it. We've just removed the main gear. Another picture opportunity right here. You want to note which way this crosswind block works. So the screw is on the bottom on the crosswind block, and we have our crosswind gear, and we have just a bunch of dirt in here. Now this said 2 ball bearings, so I've got to assume that the other ball bearing is that line roller there, because the 2 side plates have those bushings in it. While I have the penetrating oil out for cleanup, I'm just going to work some into the arms of the bail. And as long as that's working smoothly, you do not need to take that bail apart. I'm going to spray down the inside then. I'm going to let that sit for a moment so that it can dissolve some of that old grease. And I'm going to take a 12mm socket. Now in this case, you don't have a lip on this rotor, so you can take a 12mm wrench and do it that way. Or I prefer to use this. It's an old Mitchell tool. I just started turning counterclockwise and it was tightening. So this means that this has a reverse thread and you need to turn it clockwise in order to remove that nut. Once I remove the nut, we'll take that nut and put that into the parts tray so that I don't lose it. You notice I do have the gears still on the table. And we will remove our rotor. Just check under the rotor, it's all clean. You can put a drop of oil, use fishing reel oil please, onto the part that is going to come out as the trip lever. And now we have an old style instant anti-reverse here. You're going to notice that there's 3 black screws, 3 stainless screws. What you want to do with this one is you want to take the stainless screws out, but not the black ones. If you take the black ones out, you're going to lift the cover. When you lift that cover, you're going to find that there's roller bearings and springs inside this. And speaking from experience, it is not an easy task to put them back together again. You can do it if you don't lose pieces and parts, but a word of caution if you do it. If this is working fine, just leave the sleeping dog lie. All right, well, you remove that up, check for the dirt in the back. On the back side here, note that there is a difference of symmetry. There is a open spot here. That's going to accept the stud that's going to be the override for this piece. When that housing comes off, you don't oil that, this runs dry. And so you want to make sure that your, the whole thing came out, which is fine. You have a collar. You want to make sure that that collar is free of grease. In this case, it's probably free of grease because everything's been dried to it. You're going to notice it has a step that both sides are not symmetrical. This side is smaller than that one. The wider side goes up top. That would have been a good place to take a picture. We're going to remove the bearing from the pinion gear. I'm going to take those 3 pieces for the anti-reverse clutch. Put that off to the side. And I want to spin that bearing, make sure that it's functioning fine. It is. And this is a shielded bearing, not a sealed bearing, so I'm just going to oil that bearing and put it over in the corner here and let it sit. Well, we've got the penetrating oil is probably loosened the grease in the case, so let's go ahead and clean that case up now. And I would say what's happened with this reel for the most part is that the lubrications have evaporated. And if they've evaporated, the chances are this reel hasn't been serviced in several years. And, well, people ask me how frequently they should service it. But you're going to find from this video that even with all the talking and everything going on, it's only going to be about 20 minutes to service the reel. I'm trying to teach you how to do it yourself, and I would recommend that you do it yourself once a year. You can do it at the end of the season or the beginning of the season. I kind of like doing it at the end of the season, that way I don't miss a spring run. But if you want to wait till you have some time, and the time happens to be in the spring, well, then go ahead and do it then. I've lubricated the crosswind gear, and I'm putting the point of the crosswind gear down. That's so I get the right clearance on the crosswind block. That's the next piece to be cleaned. This one may need a little bit of help here. There's some older grease on the outside of it. Most of this is just surface tarnish, but you need to pay attention to the backside. Make sure that that's free of any debris or pitting. If it's pitting, you might want to file it down. And then get some grease into the slot and on the face where it's going to ride on that crosswind gear. When you do that now, you can go ahead and turn it around. Remember what we said, the screw side points down, and make sure that you get the stud into the slot here. All right, let's go back to the pinion gear now. Again, just a lot of tarnish on this. And it's clean. Again, I think most of the stuff has evaporated. I'm going to use a brush. I'm going to pull it through the grooves of the teeth, because I want to make sure if there's anything in there that's clogging it, that it becomes unclogged. While I'm doing that, I'm checking the spirals and the top of the teeth to make sure that those teeth are not worn or chipped or cracked. If you find that it's got a dent in it, sometimes you can use a microfile to get the dent out. But if it's severely contorted, you're going to have to replace the gear. A good amount of grease on there because it hasn't seen grease in a while. A little bit of grease onto the post where it goes back in. Now we'll take that bearing and reinsert the bearing and put the bearing back into the case. Get it seated as such. Next up, you want to take the collar for the anti-reverse clutch. Remember, the small side goes down, just like that. Then find the side that has the extension underneath it, and you want to line that with this piece here, which is the arm for the override. And that's a visual, just kind of put it in and take a look and make sure that it's there. And then go get the 3 screws that hold this in place. Again, do not remove those black screws unless you need to service the inside of that clutch. And if you do, I've seen a video out there on YouTube that does it. I don't have a video on it, but it's out there. And it's a matter of orienting the springs and the roller bearings inside the assembly. Okay, well, those 3 are tightened down. You can, right now you can test, and it's working, which is great. We've oiled the arms. Oh, I'll put penetrating oil. We'll put regular oil and the roller, which I believe is probably where that other bearing is. And now we'll go ahead and put the rotor back on. Remember, when we took the rotor off, it was a clockwise removal or a reverse thread sometimes, or a left thread sometimes. So this has got to go back on in a counterclockwise manner. Start it by hand so that you don't strip the pinion. And then finish it with your wrench or your socket or whatever you're using to tighten and loosen that nut. when you do that, give it a spin, make sure that it turns nice and easy, which it does. While I'm here, we use penetrating oil. I don't like penetrating oil as a lubricant, so I'm going to use regular fishing oil on those 3 junctions. Let's come on over to the main gear then. Dried grease inside. I'm just going to take a flat blade screwdriver to get whatever is remaining there. It's not much. Then we'll do the same thing with our hard brush. You can use a toothbrush. You can use a dollar store brush. That's what I happen to use. Or you can use somebody's fancy brushes. Doesn't matter. But use that to clean up the teeth of the gears. After you've done that, do the same thing you did up top with that pinion gear. Come on and take a look at it. Make sure that the teeth are all uniform, that they're not chipped or cracked. Pay attention to this one on the back here. The one on the back drives the oscillation gear. If it's missing a tooth or has a cracked tooth, your spool will not go up and down properly. Also notice as we get ready to reinstall the main gear that there is a brass shim on the face of that gear. And this needs to go in now. So you're going to just put that into your bushing. Make sure that that plastic bushing, like the other case, is flush to the case and not outside. That also has points on it. Looking back to our axle shaft now. Take the axle shaft and that goes through the pinion gear and lodges in that crosswind block, just like that. And make sure that you have the hole in the crosswind block aligned with the hole in the axle shaft. That's when you go to your parts tray or however you're managing your parts. Get the screw that belongs in the crosswind block and go ahead and put that back in. At this point, you pretty much have a functioning reel because we've taken all of the pieces out, we've cleaned all of the parts that have had the old greases and the like, and we've reinstalled. All right, we have our case goes next. That plastic bushing is self-lubricating. You don't need to do anything, but we did put a little bit onto the axle shaft, so that will hold it. You heard a nice snap there. That generally tells you that you've seated your case properly. And we'll just take the 2 and the 3rd screw here. We'll start those. So always interesting here. This one says 2 ball bearings. You would think that one of the ball bearings would be on the main drive. So that goes to the idea of be careful when you're reviewing reels to pay attention. I've seen fishing reels with 11 ball bearings and they've had bushings on the main gear. Why is that? Well, they put them everywhere else. They put them in handles, they put them on the bails, they put them on the spool and other places. And where you would think that you need them, well, they were absent. So just pay attention if you're evaluating purchasing a reel and it says a certain amount of ball bearings. Doesn't hurt to go get the schematic and find out where those ball bearings are. Don't assume anything. All right, we have the click ratchet is next. There's a little clicker under the spool here. You can see it right there attached to that spring. We'll clean that up in a moment. That's going to rub against these bumps here, and that's going to make the noise when your drag is operating. If a fish is taking it out, you're going to hear click, click, click. And you're going to hear that click because this little tongue here is going to be what's hitting it. I'm going to use a little bit of penetrating oil. There's a little bit of dried grease in there. No surprise with the, again, with the fellas reels, they've all had a lot of dried grease in it. I clean that up, clean the inside up, make sure, always check the inside of the spool. If it's been used, chances are there's some dirt or maybe sand or other things that gets lodged in there. All right, that's your adjuster button. Inside that we have a 5-pointed spring. You're going to need something like a small screwdriver or something. You're going to pull that spring out. And that is a spring. That's the operative word. It will shoot. So be careful as you remove that. Once you remove that, we'll find out what's underneath. I'm thinking that we probably have felt drag washers in there. I could be wrong. Again, you need something with reach. And then you can pull up and out. And what we have is singular. We have a washer, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because, well, it's a small reel, small fish. You don't need a lot of max drag. clean out the cavity. There's some dirt and debris in here, and if you're wondering how that gets in, this is the top of the reel. So line is going to be coming down. It's going to be wet. It's going to throw off some of that wet into this bowl, and that doesn't protect everything inside here. You'll see that that's much smaller in diameter than the hole is. Well, water settles in there, and whatever it was bringing in will eventually gather there. And if it's left for too long, well, it could have some particles that are going to rip up a drag. This one looks like it's felt. I usually oil felt, but I'm going to put some grease on here just in case because it's a pretty thick washer. And the whole idea with the grease on a washer is to keep it flexible. It's not going to make it slip any easier, turn any better. It's none of the above there. It's all about just keeping it fresh and the like. Push down on the washer and seat it, and get that 5-pointed spring and work that in. Get one side anchored in. Again, it's a spring. It will shoot, so be careful. And then just make sure that you're in the slot all the way around. When you are, you can move that spool back onto the assembly. Take your adjuster button, tighten that down. When it's tight, back it off. You don't need to leave it compressed. It'll act as a vise, and it'll push all that grease you just put in there right out, and well, could lead to deterioration of the drag washers. There's some old greases on this. I want to just wipe those off first. Oil your slot here where it's going to be the collapsible handle. You can put a drop of oil onto the shaft if you want, just so that any grease that gets in there might not gather there. And this is a square handle. Just push it back in. Let's take our cap, put that back on. We'll be ready for a test. So again, this is just over about 20 minutes with me talking, and that makes a whole lot of sense for you to spend 20 minutes on an annual basis if you're using a reel like this to keep it clean and going. Let's give it a test. So it rides nice and smooth. Let's make sure the bail works nice and easily. And there you go. So that's it. That's your Shimano Sedona 2000F. It's a nice, on the lower scale, fishing reel. It's designed for inshore, rivers, pier, boat, lake fishing, that kind of thing. It's nicely made. The materials are good. If you wanted to hot rod the reel, you could find replacement bearings for these bushings. And other than that, this reel is ready to go fishing, and go fishing for a long time to come. So I hope you've enjoyed that. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for everything it is that you do to keep us safe. Your efforts are appreciated. To everyone, please enjoy the day fishing or fixing fishing reels, whatever you're involved in for the day. Have a great day, and keep watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle.